Welcome to anyone who's joining the stream. Right now we're working on the flats and shadows for this second pose for the upcoming Ancient Breed for lightning. I kind of just filled in the basic layer of the dragon. It's what we're going to clip everything else to, so that way I don't need to be quite as exact with the edges and the silhouette of things that I'm going to keep working on, because it's all going to be grouped with this layer mask that I just made. Well, not layer mask, but locked layer. So welcome to the stream. Are the tail fins dimorphic? No. The both poses have them. Although I am looking, and there is actually a difference. We actually have a split here, so I might have to decide whether or not I want that to carry over. So that's a good catch. If there's dimorphism, it's unintentional at this point. All right, well, I'm going to keep on working. Right now, what I'm going to be doing is filling in the belly layer, and I'm using like really contrasting colors. Like it'll turn into a grayscale template at the end, but I use like bright red and stuff so I can see where the pixels are going. That way, if something bleeds over the edge of a line, it's easier to see that that has happened. Whereas if it's all in grayscale, it bleeding over the edge of the line might just read as like the edge of the line. So I usually go for a bright red when coloring these things, but it'll all be grayscale in the end. All right, I'm gonna put the music back on. I hope you enjoy the stream. Welcome to anyone just joining the stream. We're working on flats and shadows right now, and I am now working on the layer for the horn colors. I've been using a lot of the Lasso tool. I really need to look into OBS Studio add-ons so that my keyboard commands can be kind of seen when I do them, because a lot of what is happening might not necessarily make sense. For example, when I make a selection with the Lasso tool, if I hold down Shift, I'm able to continue to add to that selection. But if I accidentally went somewhere I didn't want to, I can hold down the Alt key, and that subtracts from the selection. And you'll kind of see like a little plus and minus symbol happen next to the lasso when this is occurring. But I realize some of it might be somewhat mysterious. When I'm filling with a color, it'll fill it within my lasso selection, and all I have to do is hit Shift Backspace on the keyboard, and that will fill it with my foreground color. So if you see color mysteriously appear, that's kind of what's happening too. And the reason why it's not going outside of the lines is because I have this grouped. I've made a very tight base layer, and so by grouping it, it can go outside of the lines within the silhouette, but it just can't go outside of the boundaries of this this bottom layer. So if that helps to kind of explain what's going on, or in any way improve your own workflow, I mean, that's kind of what's happening. Someone's asking, will the baby be streamed too? Yes, we will be getting the hatchling artwork out. If we stream it this weekend, it will probably be without the live chat. It'll just be a live stream where I occasionally talk, but the chat won't be there because I kind of work different hours. I don't keep regular hours, and our moderators deserve to have a weekend and things like that. And I don't want to do live chat without somebody to be able to watch it, because when I'm drawing, I don't dedicate as much time to watching the chat as I could if that was all I was doing, but I've got to be looking at what I'm doing too. So if we do a stream this weekend, it will probably be without chat. If we do it during the weekday and it's during like good hours, we would love to have our awesome moderators here to take care of the chat, and then we can have that too. I don't know any artists that keep regular hours yet. I suppose that if you had like a studio job where you went into work every day at like a separate place, that would foster regular hours. But if you've kind of got a work from home situation, yeah, most artists I know do kind of just flex their hours into whatever works for them, because sometimes after 3 hours of drawing, it's nice to take a break and then put it off and resume when it's like midnight and you're like, oh, my day's gone now, I better finish this. That might just be me though. All right, so this is just Lasso tool selections that I sometimes clean up with the eraser tool or the paintbrush tool. And I'm using this, as I mentioned earlier, just for anybody who's just joined, I'm using a very vibrant red, not because that is the intended color, but because it's very easy to see where the stray pixels have migrated to places that they shouldn't be. That way we can have a nice clean template. Some of the skin artists may know that the early templates weren't very clean, and so I'm trying, we've been trying, especially in the last half decade, to make sure that the templates are in better order. And it really helps our gene artists, and it helps anybody who's going to have to use these, because this isn't just like a piece of art that I'm doing like for a one-time use. There's going to be a lot of people who have to use this piece of art, and we want to make sure that it's like not painful for them, or that there's lots of errors for them to have to work around. And I'm going to refer back to the original pose here, because I think I did a little think there's a fade that happens here with the horns. I'm gonna just make his horns. I say he. We haven't assigned a gender to either of these. I'm going to make its horns briefly red. Yeah. Okay. So the little plates do fade up to the body color from the horn color. So I should duplicate that sort of effect here. So I'm probably going to do, oh, wrong layer. I'm probably going to use the eraser tool a little bit here. Just set to different opacities. I'm going to really zoom in here because with the eraser tool and using it at different oh wow, I can actually see the pixels. Yeah, that means I've gone far enough. I don't want to have to edit the selection afterwards. It's sometimes a little difficult to mimic the opacity exactly. So I'll just turn the opacity down here. By like 40%, and I'll go over. Oh, that might have been too powerful. And then I might take it a little bit more, give the eraser a little bit more power, and just see what like this ends up looking like. Oh, a good way to make sure that, actually I think I have a way to make sure that the transition is exactly the same as on the male. I keep saying male. This is the sitting pose. Everybody keeps saying that the sitting pose is going to be the boy, so I've started internalizing that in my head. Let's see here. These have not been assigned yet. I make the body color the same and I remove the shadow layer. Actually, if I make the body color pure white. Oh, that won't, okay. I can do a little bit more of a comparison. All right, this looks like this should actually be just a little bit more opaque. Oh, wrong layer again. Oops. That's the problem with a partially transparent brush, is if you lift your pen up, it will treat it like as a second brush stroke and just keep layering on itself. All right. Let's look at those. Yeah, those seem about the same. I will call that finished. And the base color. All right, I'm going to mute my mic for a little while and turn up the music. Hold on, wait, let me check chat first. Baby stream, while we get For the hatchling, it'll probably be the inking. I might do some sketch adjustments. I get really stressed out when I'm drawing on stream. As you may have noticed, when I like redraw fins or redraw hands, which I've done on stream, I go through a lot of edits and I get kind of self-conscious about it because I do when I draw, I make quite a few edits and redos whenever things don't look quite right. So if you want to watch me redraw the same creature like 10 times, I suppose I could do the sketch on stream, but I would just prefer to do the inking and corrections for the hatchling on stream. Just the drawing of the creature requires a lot of brain power, and then I don't really have time to like kind of pay attention to the chat. Meanwhile, I'm worried about the chat. I don't know. It's not a good combination for me. But inking and doing the shading and stuff, that's a little bit more of a process. There's a little bit, it's just kind of following steps. It's a little bit less stressful to do something like that while also kind of thinking about other things at the same time. So that definitely, for me, feels a lot better to stream. Maybe if we do streams more often, I'll get more comfortable with it, but for right now, that's just kind of where I'm at. I like the gradient on the horns. Will the horns be primary or secondary colored? The horns will probably take on the horn color, so that's part of the primary gene. And that will vary by the gene and sort of the color. For example, the color black on the color wheel tends to have like ivory colored horns, whereas the color obsidian on the color wheels tends to have dark colored horns. But some of the genes do change the horn color. So that wouldn't be universally true, but like just for like the basic genes, it would be pretty consistent with like, if you look at like guardian horns or imperial horns, it would be fairly consistent with the horn colors used across the various genes for that. In terms of like the fingernails, those vary by breed. For example, I think that bog snakes have a universal claw color, whereas I think I want to say imperial dragons have their toenails change with the horn color. This one I think is going to have one that has its claws change with the horn color. So if we've got like the maize color, the claws will be more gold rather than kind of like a universal gray. So that's kind of a per breed thing. But if I don't know where I'm going with this, but this one should change with the horn color. How do you pick the inner mouth ear color per basic tone? That depends on if the mouth and ear, honestly it depends on layering. If the mouth and ear colors are put on their own layer, then they kind of get a custom color swatch. For example, mirror dragons, if you look at mirror dragons, their tongue will change color based upon their primary color, and like it's actually the same color as like a pearl catcher's inner ear. So if those are put on their own layer, then they get and like kind of like labeled within our image generator, then they get those same hex codes applied to them. When I'm talking about hex codes, hexes means 6. It's this 6-digit code. So if I look, this is the hex code for this shade of red. If I go up here, you can see it changes. If I go down here, black is 000, white is FFFFF. But yeah, hex codes use the 10 digits and then I believe letters A through F to create kind of all these different shades. And if I change the hue, that changes the hex code too. So when I say a hex code, it just means a specific color, but the way that the image generator understands it is by its code. So sometimes the nostrils and stuff will kind of just be like a universal muted pink. I think most mouths, or at least most tongues and most inner ears, will be custom colored because they're usually brought out on their own layer. So that's kind of how those are chosen. It's already pre-assigned in the image generator, and it's just what genes we decide to create and make sure that the layers are labeled appropriately. So that when we export them and do all that good stuff, it works. I'm just doing these in various shades of light gray so that I can see that they're done, but I can still use that brilliant red against it and have it show up. So now if I go over to the next adult, we can do the fins. Okay. Oops. And I believe for the fins, I color all of the fins, but then the head fins get a separate color. That's kind of like the main color, like when you have like the pearl catcher dragons and the imperial dragons, the fur on their back is a slightly different color. With like the fey dragons, their head fins are a slightly different color. We have two colors that we use in the secondary genes. So this is, it looks like I'm supposed to do them all and then create a separate layer to poke out the ones that we want. So I'm going to probably do that in that brilliant red color again, just so I can see what I'm doing. How hard would it be to make an emperor dragon? Not an ancient, just with all those heads. Emperor dragons probably wouldn't be an ancient. They're kind of like an abomination of undead, 3 or more undead imperial dragons, so they would probably never be a breed. Though, as we've seen with Luminax, they are certainly, just a part of the world. I think it would be challenging to connect all the heads because you kind of have to have them all lead into a singular body. So unless that body has a very wide sort of base, like where the neck connects to the rest of the spine, getting them all in there would kind of be a little bit of finagling, I think. I don't think it would be impossible, but I think it would definitely be a challenge to kind of have them all connect. Like with the aberration dragons, we kind of just had them like, where's a good example? They kind of ended up merging into like a V shape, like you had this neck here, and then they kind of like made a universal V shape, and that's where the body started. So I imagine that an emperor, you'd probably need to somehow get it into that V shape, and it might, depending on how many heads you had, unless the heads are like attached on the shoulders and things, and they're coming off of there, like this is our little dragon body here. It might start to get very crowded in this location. So one option could be to make the body like very, very wide, so that way you have room for lots and lots of heads, because you've just got this nice, really thick body. So there'll also be some ways that it could be done. Like, I think it would be a challenge, but I don't think it would be impossible. It's certainly easier to work with one head because that's more reflective of the anatomy that we see sort of in animals that we encounter regularly, so it kind of jives a bit easier. That said, dragons with their little wing, these are fins, but a lot of dragons like have a wing sort of pop out of the shoulder. This structure here can get very messy, like if your wing like connects right on top of your shoulder, sometimes it makes a little bit more sense to set it back a bit so that there'd actually be room for it. Because we don't usually see 6-limbed anatomy with bones. I think, we see it with insects and things, but... All right, where was I going? I was going to do the fins. Apologies for the tangent. I thought it was an interesting question. All right, I'm gonna mute the mic for a little bit while I get these fins sectioned out, and then I'll come back and look at chat again. Dragons do have bones, confirmed. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Sorry, the dog is barking. I was just trying to explain what I was doing. I was saying that you can make a selection of previous layers by holding... Jean-Luc, quiet. Good boy. I was saying that you can make a selection of existing layers that you've already done by holding down Control. I thought I had unmuted my mic, but there's a button on the mic that also mutes it, and I have to unmute it there too, and so I was talking to the air apparently. Sorry about that, but I wanted to explain the selection and what I was doing. So yeah, you can take any selection on, and it will select, or you can take any layer and hold in Photoshop and hold down Control, and it will select all the pixels on that layer. So that can be a handy way to select previously done work, or also select the inverse of the previously done work by selecting inverse, and then it'll select everything but the previously done work. So that can be a way to save a little bit of time. Yeah, whenever Jean-Luc barks, it's usually because there's something going on outside. He's very, very invested in the outside world. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Hey, Jean-Luc. How you doing, baby? And there's Mario. They're my Velcro animals. Mario's more my husband's creature. He likes Alex's lap, and we'll spend hours there. And Jean-Luc is my Velcro dog. Yeah, I apologize again for the barking. He kind of blasts out the upper levels of the mic. All right, I'm going to mute the mic again, and I'll turn up the music. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be fading out the tips of the fins to transparency. And I explained this in the last stream, but if you weren't there, this is kind of to bring a little bit of the primary color into the secondary area so it looks a little bit less sectioned off. Like if I turn this like kind of like a purpley color, you might be able to see it a little bit better. But if the primary color is purple, you can see that the tips are now purple. Those tips weren't white, they're translucent, and that lets the primary color, which is layered underneath like the secondary sort of areas, sort of shine through in places. So we're going to be doing this with like a layer mask, which kind of lets you play with the opacity of a layer in a very controlled way. This is a feature of Photoshop, but also of, I believe, several other art programs. Do we strictly use Photoshop, or do we use other art programs as long as it gets the job done? Everything eventually needs to come back to Photoshop. I know that some of our artists use other programs. Some of them will draw on an iPad and then usually import it in. In the end, it needs to be able to be read by Photoshop. You can't use like specific features that are not going to transfer to Photoshop. I know some artists use Clip Studio Paint. I guess you can do like vector lines in there, and it's a lot more forgiving. You can do paint fills and things. So there are, we don't strictly make our artists use Photoshop, but it does have to be able to be read and exported by Photoshop kind of in the end. Because when the art is turned in, it kind of comes back to us, and I'll put it into our Dropbox art archive, and then you know, make adjustments sometimes, but ours are usually very good. There's usually very few adjustments that need to be made, and then save things out using Photoshop sort of for the website. So there's a little bit of freedom with what programs to use, but they all have to be compatible with each other. If someone used a format that wouldn't play well with Photoshop, that wouldn't work out very well. The spikes on the top of the head not get colored with the horn. Oh, you're right. I did miss those. Thank you. Good catch, chat. Yeah, I'll go circle around and do those horns real quick. I'm gonna make the horns an annoying color so that we can see them. It's not an annoying color. It's just a very starkly contrasting color. Let's go ahead and get those painted in. Yeah, no, I completely forgot about these. Or maybe I had it in my head that they were part of the body color, because the lines do connect up to the body. There we go. Let me just make sure that these have some degree of separation, or are they, oh, they are connected the whole way down. All right. There we go. Oh, hold on, actually, I think I want to drag that color back to here. So with the fins layer, I'm going to create a layer mask. You can view the contents of the layer mask in Photoshop by holding down the Alt key and clicking on it. And as you can see, the contents of the layer mask are entirely white. This is going to be kind of the same explanation I used last time. So if you're familiar with layer masks, this is going to be like old hat. But if you're not, this is kind of how they work. So I'm going to go back to the layer, and if I'm drawing on the layer mask and I draw in, for example, black, it's going to make the contents of that area 100% transparent. That's using pure black. Using pure white makes them 100% opaque. You can't see through it. If I use colors that are in between, it's all based on grayscale. If I use like a dark gray, it'll be mostly transparent. If I use a medium gray, it'll be about 50% transparent. And you can see that had a little bit of red in it. It just transitions completely to grayscale when you're working on the layer mask layer. The layer mask layer has no color information. If I use a light gray, it'll be very lightly transparent, but mostly opaque. And if we go and view the layer mask layer by holding down Alt, you can see that that's kind of what was going on. And if we look here, you can see the result of it. This is all a red image. If I disable the layer mask, all of that transparency fiddling kind of goes away. And this is a great way to make adjustments that fall somewhere between, or if you just want to be able to go back to things. So if you want to erase part of your inking, but you still want to keep the inking there, because you're not really sure if you want to lose those lines, you can use a layer mask to erase out the lines, but they're still technically there. And so if you want to get those lines back, you can. Like, here's an example. I'll just use some black here to erase out some lines. Like, this is something I've actually been thinking about. I'm not sure that I like this little line here in the fin, but I'm not 100% sure about it. I've erased it, and now I'm working with the file, and a little bit later into the file, I think, gosh, I actually wish I had those inks back. What did they look like? Because now this has kind of got a scoop shape to it. For the record, I think the fix is going to actually be to draw a fresh line, and then I'm not dealing with two lines. But but in this scenario, if I wanted to bring back that line, I could just bring the white back into it, and the line is back. So it can be great for hiding things that you might want to return to. Or, for example, if I have a piece of apparel and it's like a hat, and I need to, put the hat on the dragon, and we've got this. I'll make an artistic masterpiece here. I've drawn this hat, and I've drawn the hat fully, and I want to actually say I've worked so hard on this hat. I want to save these lines and put it on other dragons. What I can do is I can draw my hat, put a layer mask on, and now I can use it to erase out like where the horns would be on this specific dragon, so now the hat is sitting here. But then if I want, I can duplicate this layer, put it on another dragon, like for example, this guy over here, flip horizontal, and well, in that case it actually fits pretty good, but if I needed that data returned to me so that I could erase it out special, you can get it back. So it can be very useful for certain like apparel items or accessories that you want to duplicate across multiple creatures. You can keep the entire drawing intact, but then erase what you need to, and still be able to return to that drawing later. Like if you were to, for example, create a new modern breed and you wanted to have your drawings from a previous breed and you didn't have to start over. Like with form-fitting items like shirts and stuff that have to like wrap around the dragon's body, that doesn't work very well. But with things like hats, where you can have like a 3/4 perspective, a side view perspective, and a forward-facing perspective, and it'll usually work well on most dragons because it's not form-fitting. It can actually save quite a bit of time. Like without, like a loss of quality, because it would still make sense within the perspective. So that's my TED talk on layer masks and why you should use them. They're very helpful. I'm going to color the horns a light gray again, so that way I can focus entirely just on the fins. I'm going to get rid of the inking layer mask. And since we are working on the fins, I'm actually going to just resolve what's going on here with where I think the ink should actually be. And by ink, I just mean line work. Prior to doing Flight Rising, I would actually ink a lot of my drawings on paper because I didn't have this great tablet with like a screen. And so inking it on paper and then scanning it in would be how I would do my line work. And then I would do the colors in Photoshop. And so since then I just call all line work inks, but it really makes more sense to call them lines, especially when you're working digitally. I'm gonna actually erase this line so I can have a nice smooth one. Is this pure black? This is not pure black. Okay. I actually do like that line though, so I'm going to lock the layer and make sure that that line work is pure black. And then I'm just going to clean it up a bit because it didn't match up perfectly. It's with these long swishes where it's supposed to be nice and smooth, it's a little bit fiddly to get them to line up nicely. Now if I go back to my basic layer, I'm going to just make sure that this is following the new lines that I've done. There we go. Yeah, I feel better about that. I might actually go through this whole dragon and kind of soften up some of the lines, particularly in the belly scales, just because, and maybe in the paws and stuff. Because I feel like this dragon breed has a lot more minute line detail that worked its way in, and we do want it to kind of match the style of the existing Flight Rising dragons, so that it doesn't look wildly different. Like, the art evolves over time, but we still want it to look like it's the same style, like they could exist in the same universe. That's one thing we have over 10 artists who have, are working on Flight Rising, and we have to kind of all try and draw in the same style so that it looks cohesive, and one item doesn't look very different than another. So that's something that we all kind of collaboratively try and do together to make sure that the site has like a style guide, or the site has a style. We use a style guide, like kind of explaining, oh, if you have a shadow, make sure that it doesn't have a lot of texture in it. Everything should be smooth transitions. We like to use a more vibrant color palette, those kinds of things. All right. So with these fins, it looks like the head fins, all of them are going to get their tips faded. So what I do for this is I grab a lasso tool and I make my selection. And then I use a gradient that goes from pure black to transparent. And as we kind of explained before, the black is going to be 100% transparent when used on a layer mask. And where it, here, I'll just do it. It's easier to show than tell. And where it fades out, it will be varying levels of transparency. So if we go and look at that layer mask, we can kind of see what's going on there. And the end effect is that you have this nice fade to another color while still being able to maintain like a hard edge. A little pixel went out of bounds, so I'm just going to clean that up by using pure white, which will make it opaque again. And then I'm just going to keep using layer selections and this gradient tool. The gradient tool can be a little bit tricky to like work around curves and stuff because you want it to fade along the way. So in that case, there might be cause to use like a soft airbrush as opposed to a linear gradient. Because the linear gradient can only gradiate in one direction. There's a radial gradient that sometimes works, but it projects outward. Okay. I'm going to redo these. I'm looking at the one that we did on the sitting pose, and there's no bottom edge to it. It transitions 100% smoothly into the main fin of the dragon. So I am going to make a bigger selection so that I can do a more gradual fade, and see how that works out. So that way the end of my gradient occurs before the end of the selection. Okay, yeah, that is achieving the same effect. We want them to look very similar. This one, it's actually okay to drag it off canvas because it's going behind the horn. Ah, what did I do? I hit the wrong keyboard command. And I'm just returning color to certain areas using pure white, which again is 100% opacity. Okay. Oh, if you're seeing a hand occasionally like appear right there on my camera, that's Alex. He's in the office with me. He's Suburban Samurai and Flight Rising. So I don't have four hands. He's just working in the background. So if you were curious who those mysterious hands belong to, that's Alex. All right, I'm going to, since I've kind of explained what's going on with the process that I'm using, I'm going to again mute my mic for a little bit and turn up the music. Oh, Alex chat says hello. All right, thanks for coming, everyone. Okay, I think we've kind of done all of. Oh, thank you, Acorn. I was just notified that I was not fully unmuted. I was just saying that we have now kind of made some transparent fades on the fins, the major parts of the back of the dragon, and the tip of the tail. I didn't do fades on the bit that goes down the tail, but I didn't do it on the sitting pose either, because it was a lot of little fins in a small area, and it ended up looking kind of busy. So I think I'm pretty satisfied with where this is at. I am going to, for now, leave the layer mask intact, but in the end I will apply it so that the layer is just a layer that has varying levels of opacity. I'll go ahead and probably try and keep everything light so that way I can use a darker red to see what's going on with where I'm putting the color down. But I think we're ready to move on to sectioning out the head fin. And the great thing about that is I'm going to be able to use the work that I've already done here to save quite a bit of time. So I'm just going to make a relatively broad selection. The only places where I really need to be exact about it is where it meets up with another portion of the fin. Everything else has already been cut out. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. So I'm just using Alt and Shift to add. Sorry, so there was something exciting happening outside and the dog had to bark. So I'm using the Alt key and the Shift key to add to and subtract from this selection that I'm making. After I finish this, maybe we'll give the dog a treat so that he can have something nice to chew on during the stream. And what I'm going to do is make sure that the places where it meets up with existing fins is very tidy. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. Okay, that looks good to me. So I'm going to duplicate the fins layer and apply the layer mask. Then I'm going to select the fins layer by holding down Control. And then I'm going to select the inverse. And I will delete. And then when I group it, it should, that's a good selection. I'm actually going to apply the layer mask on the fins too, that way we have a pretty solid layer structure. Okay, all that's left now is, I believe, the facial features, and this dragon does have an open mouth, so it will probably be having the tongue be recolored per color. So I'm actually going to open up a template that already has that going on so that I can mimic kind of what's already been done, so that it'll be kind of consistent for our layering structure and our recolor engine. Oh wait, hold on, that dragon actually doesn't have a open mouth. Close. It was the other pose that had the open mouth. Okay. So I'm going to, I'm just going to color this pink, but it will be recolored per the primary gene, kind of like the same as like mirror tongues or the interior of aether mouths. Then I will color in the facial features, such as the teeth and the eyes and the little nostril. Facial features do not get recolored per breed. They're just basically a layer that remains the same and never gets filled. Chat has pointed out that the fins don't look like they're part of, the head fins don't look like they're part of the neck frills, and that's actually a good point. So if I look at how they were done on the seated pose, I did a faded transition. And if we look at how I did them on the leaping pose, they just stop. So I'll go fix that to be matchy. Good catch. just realized we never gave our very good dog a treat. Oh my gosh, he's jumping up. He's like, where is it? Where's my treat? I need to be self-indulgent and show you my cute dog one more time. He's on his little bed. That'll keep him busy for about 20 minutes. Oh yeah, that's Mario. And Mario really doesn't do treats. He likes catnip, but I'll like put a piece of chicken in front of him and he doesn't know what to do with it. Our cat that was really hungry for people food and for treats sadly passed a few years ago, but the current two cats that I have, they're both 16. They just never really got into people food or things outside of their kibble. I have a hard time getting them to eat wet food, so that's the reason why Mario didn't get treats, because he, generally speaking, doesn't want them. Alright, chat is saying the fins / rough, the fins undel, the spot. Fin spot is missing. Hold on. Do you mean like on the shadow layer? In front of the mouth weren't filled fins on the layer. Oh. This pink area? I was thinking that was the other side of its jaw. Like that wasn't supposed to be a fin. I could look at that again. I mean, we could remove the line. In front of, not the pink. Are we talking about like with the fades? Oh, I know. Oh, they were never colored in. Okay, I see it. Good catch. Thank you. Sorry, when there's so much fin, this dragon has a lot of fins. When there's so much fins occupying the space of the dragon, it's like interesting trying to figure out what fins in particular are being referred to. There we go. We can lock the layer, although I do think actually I need to put a new layer mask on that and do some fades on this real quick. We'll apply the layer mask, and that should be good. Yes, chat saved the fin, thank you. When I do my shadows, I erase into it a lot. Usually, like, I don't know if you saw me make those big lasso tool marks. That was just me figuring out where the light would generally be hitting. But I like to erase into and then add back to the shadows. For how I like think about shadows and light, it is oftentimes easier for me to paint where the light would be than to paint where the shadows would be. And it can create interesting negative shapes by painting where the light would be. But sometimes you can create the better shapes by painting where the shadows would be. So if you see me adding to and then subtracting from, that's kind of what's going on here. I'm trying to convey the plate texture without over shading this to where it's going to be distracting, because generally speaking, most flight rising dragons do not have extensive plating on their bellies and the shading on it is minimal. So to keep this kind of in line with that sort of look, keeping the shading minimal where you're going to be able to see the clear color without an additional color being multiplied down on top of it is going to be beneficial. So that's a little bit of what's going on. Some of this is probably going to get knocked back into shadow because there's like an arm in front of it, but I'll figure that out a bit later. The negative space under the jaw where the neck bends is uncolored. Oh, do you mean this area? That is actually the back of the neck. These dragons here, they have thicker necks. The fins are on the side. So if I were to draw its neck, I'm using the eraser tool. Its neck would actually be back here, and the line of where the fin is on the side. So what you're seeing is actually the back of the neck. And if we were to do the back of the dragon, it would like be back here, which is why you see the tail pop out there. It's because the fins are on the side. Right under the jaw, above the belly. Okay, hold on, let me look. Sorry, there's so many negative spaces, I just assumed people would be talking about that one, because it is a little bit of an optical illusion. Let me look at here. Right under the jaw, above the belly. Oh, that is supposed to be part of the belly. Okay, yes, thank you. Another good catch. Sorry, I was misinterpreting what you were saying. Yes, there we go. That's plating. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to ignore you or like divert to something else. I literally didn't know which negative space we were talking about. Yeah, the plates having to do a complete 360 in this very small area is a little bit awkward. But that's kind of what the neck's doing. It's rearing back. But I might see if there's a way to simplify and clean that up a bit, because it definitely, there is something slightly off about the spacing there. I'm just gonna get the shadows done and we can kind of revisit it. In another session. Okay. So I'm just making sure the shadow's where I need it to be so that when I start erasing the light, there's still shadow to erase into. So that way you can have like interesting little negative spaces between the knuckles that kind of imply where the hollows might be. Hold on, I have to do another self-indulgent dog cam. Jean-Luc, hi buddy. How you doing? Oh, he's still working on his chew. This is as far as the camera stretches. I'm limited by a wire, so I can't zoom into his cute little face. It's really cute. He holds his little chew between his paws and I don't know. I know all dogs do these things, but I just melt a little when I see my dog doing it. It's like, oh, it's so cute. As a heads up, we might be ending the stream in about 10 minutes. It's a Friday, and our mods have, at this point, put in slightly more than 8 hours. So we definitely want our team members to be able to enjoy the rest of their day. I get up a little bit later, so I have not yet put in my work hours. So I will probably start the stream again later tonight. It will not have chat if I do that, because it's a little bit difficult to moderate chat and concentrate on drawing something at the same time. So we'll just kind of do without. So I will link that on the website if we do a second stream when we do a second stream to finish off the shading on this dragon. I might actually reduce some of the shadows here. It's very, very, very strong shadows for in between. I can also do something fun like with a layer mask and just make a selection where I want to soften some shadows, and I can make them slightly more transparent. Well, that still feels very, very separated. All right, new strategy. Let's get the shadow in there. Let's get the shadow over there. Let's make this an all over kind of, this is the side of the hand shadow. Let's get that all connected. Okay. Okay, that actually looks tidier not to have all those negative space shadows in there, especially when we zoom out. This is a very small part of the dragon, so maybe those minute shadows were cluttering up the area. I think we'll go a little bit more generalized here. And that should keep the colors being able to be nice and bright and not have too much texture interfering with things like all the patterns and skins and things that these guys can have going on. Oh. Still want to have a little bit of that finger in the light. I might go to the shadow layer though and soften up that wrist shadow. Or maybe I'll even reduce some here. You got back up. He was laying on his side, like very flat, just chewing on his little treat. But he got up when I spun around. All right. I'll mute my mic for now. Do we know the name of these dragons? No, we're still deciding on the name. The name will probably be revealed in mid to late summer when we release the dragons. That way we've still got. Sorry, that was the dog. That way we still got, you know, a little bit of something to reveal when the when the ancients come out. It is probably about time to end the stream at this point. I'm going to go get some dinner. And when I return later this evening for the stream, I will post in the site status box to let everyone kind of know that the stream is happening. I might link to a forum thread, that way if you have questions, I can maybe refer to the forum thread sort of after the stream is over. But there will be no live chat this evening. But we can finish up kind of shading this dragon. I use the term finish. The dragon is open to revisions like all the way up until the point it's released. So if we discover things like a spine that wasn't shaded or something that's looking a little bit strange, we have time to correct it. As an example of things that I'm kind of looking at, I've been fussing with this tail position, and I got it somewhere where I'm a bit happier with it. But the curvature of the fin, I would actually like to sort of fuss with this. And I might do this during this evening stream, just to get it where it's supposed to be, but I wanna put it on the side of the tail. So I would kind of want it to do, more of a shape like this before it scoops up. So, or it might even be more of a side view. That might make more sense. And then we do the scoop. Yeah, that might actually look best. So, this area here, I'm looking hard at, and simplifying this area here is something I'm also looking into changing. The rest of the dragon pose I'm actually pretty happy with. So we might do some small drawing adjustments, but I want to get just the shading finished, so that way I can kind of see the template as it might exist, closer to being a finished piece of art before making those changes. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.